One of the biggest ways we learn is by mistakes. You can't avoid them. One of my biggest mistakes was accepting work that I had no business accepting because it was something ridiculous. Like, let me give you an example. Somebody would ask me to make a dubstep remix of the song that, is their lyrics over a beat. They want to send me the beat and the vocals, and can I make a dubstep remix of it? Now, there are people out there who make dubstep music all the time, and that would be the person to make a dubstep remix of a song. They know the genre, they know the way it's supposed to everything sound and flow and feel, and I look at things differently. As a mixer and as somebody who doesn't make dubstep music, I would just look at it from a sonic perspective, and I want to be given the stuff to be able to make as good as I can make it sound, but I don't want to have to get into your head and figure out how to create from scratch or using a couple layers that you send me in a beat track or something and make that into a dubstep song. I mean, that wouldn't be something I should accept. I used to accept ridiculous random stuff like that because anything was something. Now that is always gone bad because whenever you do something like that, you can't fake it. You can't fake that you've never done dubstep music. If you're trying to create a dubstep song, you've listened to a couple and you think you could just do it. In my opinion, it goes so much deeper than that. You need a love for the music first, which will allow you to connect with what they're trying to get you to make. And then you really have to be on the same page with that artist. So even if you are somebody who makes dubstep remixes, how do you know you're going to make the thing that they have in their head? You have to understand when someone's telling you something that's a little bit too open to interpretation. Because if they can get you to do it and not charge them until they hear it, well, they will be happy to have you put in all the effort, work, time, however long it takes you. Then they'll listen to it and say they don't like it. It wasn't what they were thinking. So that's how you get burned, in my opinion. You have to really make sure you understand what someone wants, or you get paid up front, or you make it where even if you get paid up front, it's not a fix. Because if they don't like it at the end, they're still not going to be happy, and you want happy people. You want the people that hire you to be happy. So it's not a fix to get paid up front. You still need to know after you've gotten paid that you can really interpret what they want in a way that there's not so many possibilities. And in my opinion, when it comes to creating things from scratch for somebody, they really should be in the room. There's a lot of tools out there, tools that I use to give DAW sharing lessons and this and that. And we can go through sessions and, while they have all their plugins open, and we can tweak stuff and identify problems and really get into it. And I'm listening on my monitors and they're listening on their monitors in their studio. It's a lot we can do remotely today. But when it comes to creation of music, remotely is still very hard to do at the same level. It's possible to do, but it's more annoying and herky-jerky and just not as smooth as if someone's around. Because it's easy when you're building something for someone to be like, ooh, I don't like this. And it's like, wait, what don't you like? This part? Okay, well, I'll just change the melody a little like this. Now do you like, yeah, I love that. Okay, good. You just got done what would have potentially sent you down a path completely wrong, and then they'd hate it. After you layered it and made it all, you mixed it, you made it sound as good as possible, they hate it. When all you had to do was tweak this one little thing in the beginning, and now they like it. So there's just really no substitute when you're going to be a producer in the traditional sense of the word. Not producer meaning beat maker, which is a repurposing of that word. It's like that word was taken and it became another thing. And the last thing we need in music is more words that mean the same thing. Come up with other words. Why is it, we're creative people. We're not the most creative people in the world, but we're creative people, right? Some of us might be the most creative people in the world, right? Prince, anybody, anyway, point is, come up with another word. Why can't you call it, an apple sprinkle? Call it something. You know what I'm saying? Just, why has it got to be the same thing? This guy's a great apple sprinkle. That's not even a word. It doesn't have to be a word. It could be three noises. Call it that. Just pick something. I don't know. A lot of what I do is explain things that are overcomplicated for no reason. Why? They don't have to be. I hate going into projects that have no end. And you really don't know when you're going to be able to end a project where you're creating a song for somebody who's not around you, with you, near you, like so they can kind of guide and be part of the process. So you know where the end will be, and you're doing it remotely, and the person might basically just keep having changes or tweaks or different this and different that. Can you, let's add this, let's add that, because no matter what, no matter how you look at it, when people say that kind of thing, they don't usually think of it from the point of view of, budget. Because as a lot of people talk about on this channel, budget and music, like creating great art and budget, they don't go hand in hand. And there's a lot of people who say that also say that they will work with artists, who don't have a lot of money. And a lot of times it's like they're just eating the cost themselves. And when they do that, some artists take advantage of it. Not all, but some, because that's how some people are. They might really take advantage of the fact that you're not charging them per hour, and you wind up having to do so many different things and iterations and all these changes and all like can we try it this way? Can we try? And what winds up happening with that is you're not happy at the end because you're doing way more than you should have ever been doing for nothing, getting paid nothing, and you still have to feed yourself, your family, and keep the lights on. And at the same time, at the end, they're not happy, you're not happy. You got to get to a place where people are happy, so you keep wanting to put in time, and it just keeps going down the toilet. So, in my opinion, that idea that you need to really understand what they're saying, interpret what's going to happen, really outline the course, like that is what needs to happen when you're going to produce something for somebody. And if they're in the room, it's so much easier to make that go well. Now, when it comes to remixes, I love doing them. But if it's in my wheelhouse, it's possible and can be great. And that's the only way I'll accept it. So in other words, music styles I like, things I know, and you got to, when they say that they want an old school, rock style, classic rock thing, yeah, that's the wheelhouse. But if they want a dubstep thing or something, like I'm not the dubstep guy. They should go to the dubstep guy. And what I wound up telling this specific person was, you should get, this is a person that would download beats, put their lyrics and melodies on it, then send it to me to mix. And as part of mixing, I would chop up, sometimes I'd chop up the song, change the way the instrumentation went, pitch shift certain things every once in a while. Like I'd make it as great as I could make it. I'd make it match their melody even more than it was in a lot of cases. I'd add drum fills that weren't there. I would do all sorts of stuff to make it better than it was, add vocal effects, all sorts of things that would really just enhance the way it sounded. And I do it during the mixing stage. So technically I'm mixing, but also producing, but it's mixing / producing because I'm not seeing it through from the beginning to the end. So it's not like the fullest extent of what a producer really is, in my opinion, from, the traditional definition of it really. So the way I look at that is that's something that can happen because I listen to it and I think, this would sound better if this, and I'm imparting my decision-making and my opinion and my this and that happens when the person you're working with trusts you. That will go well. And if you can create a result that's far better than what they had before, a quick A and B test, you'll always win. If it's really better, you will win that A/B test. And then they'll be like, I love what you're doing. I love the mix. I love what you're adding to the songs. It's so cool. It's totally different now than it was before. It's like a new song and it's better. That kind of thing can happen from a beat track when it's my decision-making that's like guiding it. But if I have to be pushed into a box of a genre that I don't know, I should not accept it. That's a big thing. Don't just take everything that you get. And especially guys starting out, do not work for free. You need to get paid something because the something will at least keep that person talking, calling you back, telling you what they think. Like you'll get some feedback, which is the most important thing to people starting out. Feedback is absolutely what you need. And you need to learn how to navigate and deal with artists and navigate relationships with artists, navigate relationships with maybe, their colleagues or friends or band members. Like you really need to kind of figure all that out. There's no better way than to do it, but avoid charging nothing at all costs. Avoid it because you won't get people you want to work with if you charge nothing. you will get the bottom of the barrel. You need people who are remotely serious and up. Super serious is the best, obviously, but remotely serious can also work, especially if you're relatively new. You're working with somebody who's also relatively new. Like, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, you should realize that the worse the quality of the thing you get, the harder it will be to mix. So it's so important to make sure you connect with what you're going to mix so that you can make it great. It's also so important that when you listen to the thing you're supposed to mix, does it have anything in it that's really wrong with it? Because sometimes it's better to pass on those than to beat yourself up and realize you can't make it better. But this is also coming from someone who tried to make things better that were terrible for a while and realized that that's not possible. So I almost don't want to circumvent your journey here. Maybe you need to kind of do some stuff that's unfixable to realize where the line is between fixable and not fixable. I won't rule that out. That could be true. But really, the point I want to hammer home, and the thing I'd really love to hear from you guys, is any horror stories like this that have happened to you. People could learn from this stuff in the comments, And like I said, I'm not trying to dissuade people from making a dubstep remix, maybe, or just remixes in general. Maybe if that's your thing, do it. It's all about what do you do well? What do you know well? Because that will make it where you have the best shot of giving somebody something that wows them. And then also, you have to determine how easy this person is to work with. So a lot of times I sort of recommend, before you go, head over heels into like producing an album for somebody or recording, 10 tracks and mixing them and doing all of it, you should kind of work with them in some facet first that's easier to work with. Like, in other words, they have something they've done that's pretty good, but might be improved with a mix, and you want to, what you hear it, you say this would make it better, and you can do that remotely. You get a sense of who they are, of how easy they are to deal with, whether or not they like the product, whether you guys get along together. And that's a much easier, like, test the waters kind of thing to know what you're getting into before you decide, to do a big, huge project and see how you could be really in for it if you don't know who you're dealing with. And a lot of times you figure all this out on one song. You figure it all out on one song. So it's not like you need to do a ton, but a couple songs in, you would know who you're dealing with. You'd know if you guys get along. You know if you hear music similarly, because I think that's the most critical thing too. As mixers, we put on a certain hat to listen. But ultimately, it's how we hear music that guides us to what we should be focused on when we're mixing. It's like how we hear it. It's what we want to hear, what we want to push forward in the mix, what we want to make the focal point. Like, does that and all those things I just mentioned line up with what the artist you're working with also hears and thinks and wants? And it actually sounds more complicated than it is, because a lot of times they want their song to sound the best. And to them, they don't know what that means other than they want it to sound the best, right? But to you, that could potentially mean that this thing has to make people feel something. So if you can make them feel something when they hear it, they like it. So it's not so much about everybody has to understand that, like, you always like, vocals a little lower and they want them louder. So that's a mismatch. No, it's not that. It's more down to, like, they're going to hear the big picture because they're not a mixer. And if they're somebody who just focuses on their own part, that's a hard person to work with, but you can often kind of get them around that in a way, depending on how open-minded they are. But like with bands, that becomes more of an issue where everybody wants to hear their own instrument more. It's not all the bands. And to tell you the truth, the more successful bands, that's never the case. Like, I mean, I worked with a guy years ago who, like my band, there was a couple guys in it, it was like a drummer specifically who would want something a little louder, and it's always his drums. And the guy said to him, who had worked with a bunch of artists that were way bigger than us at the time, and now at the time and now, and he literally, the mixer said to him, he goes, "It's amazing. All the bands who aren't signed always have the most problems with the mixes." It's just so funny. I just remember it like it was yesterday, because he totally called my drummer out, and I'm just standing there like, he's probably got a point. But like, I took that to heart, because at the time I was like always interested in engineering, but I didn't know that much. This was like, I'm kind of learning. This was a long time ago. And I'm like, I see the problem that happens is that our band, could easily take this thing and make it so much worse by us imposing our will on this song. Like, let the guy who's sitting here mixing songs for bands that are doing well, like, let him make the call. Why are we deciding what's too loud or low? Like, what? It didn't make sense to me then. And I'm convinced I ruined a couple mixes because of my own. I ruined my own mixes because there was somebody else mixing it who I didn't trust. See, when you trust the mixer, you let them do things, and at the end, you have a tendency to accept it. It's like monitoring. If you don't trust your monitors, you're dead in the water. Because as soon as you doubt what's going on, and then you have to check it 6, 7, 8 times, you never know if the decision you just made to make this louder is a good one or a bad one. So you're forced to second guess, check, and run around and do ridiculous things. It makes the whole process fall apart. Whereas if you trust your monitoring, you don't do that. And if you trust your mixer, the guy who's going to mix the song for you, you don't do that. You let him do things, and then you have a tendency to accept it. You have a tendency to give it a chance. And then when you listen in a couple places, sometimes you change. You're like, initially I thought my vocal was too low, but now I realize it's right. Or initially I thought my guitar was too low, but now I realize it's the perfect volume. Initially I thought my snare was too dark, but I realized if it was brighter, it would be painful. Like, there's just all those things that happen to, people who go through this process. And what I realized was, I ruined a few mixes because I didn't trust the guy. It wasn't that I didn't I thought I trusted him because I hired him to mix the songs, but for some reason, as the process went, like the first couple songs that I got back, and then I just started to doubt whether he knew as much as I thought he knew, and whether he was as good as I thought he was. And as that happened, it made it worse and worse. Where now I felt like I had to take control more. I can't let you drive this ship anymore. I need to start driving. And I made it right into the rocks, man. I probably made it way worse than it was, because we have a tendency to do that to our own stuff more than everybody else's stuff. If you were to work on other people's stuff, you'd have a much more objective perspective, but it's not. A lot of people work on their own stuff. So I'm just saying, it's harder for you. You should absolutely do it if you can, if you want to, really, but it's harder because it's really hard to see yourself objectively. It's hard. Like, I can't hear myself objectively. I hear the way it sounds coming through, all these filters of the room and then through my ears and back, and my head voice mixes with my real voice like everybody else. And then, when I hear myself on a recording or something, it's like, that doesn't sound like me. I don't get it. Who is that? So I'm just saying, I don't know if you guys experienced this, but leave something in the comments that has anything to do with any of this jibba jabba. But I feel like it's valid, because I'm trying to let people know that you got heartache ahead if you do stuff you shouldn't be doing. And the stuff you shouldn't be doing is often the stuff you don't really know as well as you want to know, maybe. But, make 100 dubstep songs and then make remixes for dubstep people. That's the move. Really learn what you're trying to do, in my opinion. So just trying to save you some heartache that I experienced. And never produce songs remotely where you got to do all the work and then they got to listen at the end, because people always have a different idea of what it was going to be. There's a million possibilities of what something could turn out like, and you bet it's not what you're thinking, what they're thinking. That's the beauty of our brains. So if they don't trust you fully, as far as whatever you deliver, it's going to be great with me, you can't do that. They should be in the room. They should hear what's going on so that they can make changes or adjustments or just guide you a little bit. You'll be able to have communication. What is it exactly that you don't like? Oh, that's super easy. I could just fix it like this. Oh, you want that to be more of, you want the thing to be focused around the 808. We could do that. Let's do that. And then everything can change so quick. Because that's what we do as producers. We move and vibe with the wind in the room. We feel what people are given and the energy, and we go with it, and we try to turn it into the best thing we can. And you can't do that if they ain't in the room. So I hope this made some sense. All right? I really do. Leave it in the comments. I appreciate it. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. It helps. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. Before I go, today, day 8, nothing's gonna ever keep you down. A little pitchy on the down, but day 8, chest, shoulders, tries today. We killed it, did well, also rocked the stomach. It's getting better. I'm seeing marginal changes, but it's only day 8, so stick around. Hope you're doing the same. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy.